Morning everyone, it's Wednesday the 15th of July 2026. What a week we're in for here in Southport. We're in the middle of the Open Championship. The competition starts properly tomorrow. There's also the small matter of a World Cup semi-final tonight, England versus Argentina. I've got a feeling that might go to penalties. France got knocked out last night, nobody saw that coming. Can you imagine going into the final day of the Open on Sunday and Tommy Fleetwood and even Matt Baldwin still having a chance, and England being in the World Cup final at the same time? That'll be some occasion here in Southport. And on that note, I think that leads us to my theme of the video today, looking at some lost sports grounds within Southport. I'm going to do it in two parts. Part one is going to be sort of the northern areas and central areas. I'm stood on the corner of Cambridge Avenue and Cambridge Road here in Churchtown. And the reason I'm stood here is I'm going to tell you about a sports ground that was called Green Lane. Now, some of you might not know, but before Cambridge Road was developed, the stretch of Cambridge Road from roughly where we are here, Little Bibby, there was a track where Cambridge Avenue is, all the way to where what's now called Churchtown Lights. That was actually called Green Lane, and there was some sports fields, mainly used for rugby and football, just behind here. One of the teams was called Southport Wasps, rugby team. They were around in the 1870s, and also Marshside Football Club. I'm going to be putting some pictures and some maps as well on the screen as I'm talking. Got a lot of stops to do, so I think we'll make our way to our second stop. Okay, site number 2 is just behind me here. It's some flats today called Stirling Court. Prior to, some of you may remember there used to be a knitting factory here, and then prior to that there was a sports ground here. It's also the site of the ancient Churchtown Fair, actually, the old Churchtown Fair, which goes back many centuries, used to take place here. But this was also the site of a football ground. Churchtown Old Boys played here, who later amalgamated with Hyde Park to form North Meals FC. And we're going to be going to the site of North Meals FC's ground next. Okay, this is site number 3, where I'm stood now. On the road's called Churchgate. Back then, it was also dissected by Pete's Lane. Pete's Farm stood behind me, just behind me where these houses are. And there was a football ground here. And in 1893, Hyde Park Football Club and Churchtown Old Boys amalgamated, and there was created a football ground here with a stand. Many supporters helped erect hoarding around the ground. It was said in the paper, it was said that the ground would be in apple pie order when the proper time arrives. There was also a cricket pitch just a little bit further along here. Cricket teams played there. I think the Southport Trinity would have played here as well before they went to the Rookery in 1924. There was also there used to be a factory in Churchtown, a small factory called British Electric Vehicles, and their cricket team played on the cricket pitch here as well. So we're going to leave Churchtown now. We're going to move into Hyde Park. I'm going to show you some of the football grounds that were in that area. Okay, so now on the Devonshire Road, Tarleton Road fields, where many of you will know football still takes place this day. But I'm going to tell you about a bit of sporting history in Hyde Park. So there used to be a rugby team called Hyde Park Grasshoppers, who I believe would have played probably in this area before Warren Road existed. I estimate they'd probably played here, the Hyde Park Grasshoppers, and in around 1884, or certainly by 1884, they had switched codes and formed the original Hyde Park Football Club. Now, Hyde Park FC were quite a big deal back in the late Victorian times. They entertained a team called Blackburn Olympic, possibly on the. They had an enclosed ground with a stand. I estimate it was probably in this area before these houses on Warren Road were built. Devonshire Road, some of the houses on Devonshire Road slightly older. I estimate it was in this area. Looking at old maps, and they entertained a team called Blackburn Olympic, who in 1886, who just 3 years previous won the FA Cup. So we had an FA Cup winning team playing somewhere in this vicinity in the 1880s. They played many teams. I think they played Everton as well, Hyde Park. They had a huge rivalry as well with back then what was called Southport Central, which is of course our Southport Football Club today. Those of you that know a little bit about the history of Southport Football Club will know that thanks to the research of Dan Hayes in his excellent book, The Town's Game, quite a lot of smaller teams all came together to form one professional club for the town. But Hyde Park, they wanted to stay independent, and therefore a fierce rivalry developed between Southport Central and Hyde Park FC. And then they played a game, I think it was in January 1889. Sorry, Dan, if I've got that wrong. But there was 2,500 fans on the ground here in Hyde Park. Absolutely fascinating stuff. They had a second ground, Hyde Park, which we're gonna go to that site now. Okay, so Hyde Park Football Club moved to a new ground in about 1889. It was 1889, and that ground was in this area, and it's basically the junction of Chester Road and Wennington Road. There was a football ground here. It had a stand, quite a significant stand. Probably, looks like it could house around 800 people, possibly an estimate. And their opening game to mark the opening of the ground was against Bolton Wanderers, who were just 1 year previous were, of course, a founder member of the Football League. And as I said, the ground was here, roughly where the junction of Chester Road and Wennington Road is. Going in the direction of Row Lane, it also covered where Bengarth Road is. There were also further pitches a little bit further down Wennington Road, in the vicinity of Fisher Drive. There were some football pitches there as well. I think they were used well into the early 20th century as well. So we're now going to go to our next site, which is a multi-sport site on Row Lane. Okay, so we're now on Grange Avenue, the site of a former house called the Grange, of which, of course, Grange Avenue and Grange Road are named after. The Grange was built around 1854 by Charles Hesketh for his daughter and her husband to be a Scotsman called George Robertson. Now, George Robertson was playing cricket in Southport by at least 1855, and adjoining the Grange, where Ayrton Road, Melling Road and Hartwood Road now stand, were a series of fields where cricket was played, athletics, rugby, and also later tennis. There were tennis courts as well. So there was cricket played here from, I believe, at least 1855. The Southport Cricket Club played here before they went on to form S&B. There was another cricket club called Alexandra Cricket Club who played here. The Southport Cricket Club entertained an All-Star England 11 3 times during the 1870s. The original Southport Athletic Society meetings took place here in the 1870s. So quite an interesting multi-sport site here on Row Lane. The entrance was up near where the Hartwood Road junction is now. There was a farm there. Found it on the 1871 census, described as Cricket Farm. So yeah, quite an interesting area here before the houses were built. So the next site we're going to go to is the former athletics ground on Sussex Road and where Larch Street is. Okay, so we're now at the junction of Sussex Road and Larch Street. This was where, mainly through the centre of Larch Street, where an athletics ground stood. The steam laundry was where there's flats are just down there, Aspen Gardens, fairly modern build. I'll show you that on the map now. And then the athletics ground basically went through where the centre of Larch Street is here. It was opened in 1882. I think it was only in use for about 10 years. The original Southport Football Club played here, the Association Football Club that were founded in 1881. They played here from 1884. I think that led to them, when they were playing here, they actually went bust in 1886. So as I said, I've put a picture up of the athletics ground which stood here. Mysteriously, no one's ever seen any photos of it, well, I certainly haven't either, or Dan Hayes either. So if anyone knows of any photos of the athletics ground which stood here on Sussex Road, and please let us know. The next site we're going to is in the town centre. Oh, we're now on Talbot Street in the town centre, and the best way for me to show you what I'm going to describe is probably here. If you look behind me, you can see there's you've got the red brick house here, the Accrington brick, and then you've got a slightly older style house here. So up to about this point, there was a field here called Circus Field. There was Charlie Keith's Circus used to pitch up here on an annual basis during the 1870s. It was very popular. Lots of evidence of it in the newspaper archives. It was roughly stretched to where Princess Street is, and probably further that way as well, towards what is now Yellow House Lane, and the vicinity of Riding Street. Sports teams would also use this field for recreation and training purposes. The earlier original Southport Football Club trained here prior to moving to the athletics ground on Sussex Road, where we've just been. And also, interestingly, I found a newspaper report of horse racing taking place here in Southport Town Centre, on this field called Circus Field. And just going back to the cricket as well, between at least 1849 and possibly the 1860s, when Riding Street started to develop, cricket was played on the site of Riding Street. I found, if any of you have read my blog about organised cricket in Southport, 1849 to 1855, there's evidence of crickets being played on the site of Riding Street. So we're now going to go down Scayswick New Road, where there were again quite a lot of interesting lost sports grounds along that stretch. Okay, so I'm now on walking up Cumberland Road towards Scayswick New Road. Scayswick New Road had quite a series of sports pitches along it prior to these houses being built, between Ash Street and all the way down to where the old Kew Gardens Zoological Park was, and Ash Lane, which is Everard Road today. Yeah, there were quite a few pitches. So the original Southport Football Club, Association Football Club, which switched codes from rugby to Association Football in 1881, they played their first game in Southport on a pitch backing in between Westmoreland Road and Ash Street. There were quite a number of pitches along here, all in a row, all the way down to Everard Road, or Ash Lane as it was called. Other teams that played here were Southport Wanderers, Southport Olympic, who were a rugby club. There was also a showground, which I'm going to tell you about when we get a bit closer. And Southport Central also played here from 18. Well, they moved from Sussex Road in 1888, and then they came here in around 1889. I think they played their opening game here against Preston North End, and their ground was roughly where Rutland Road is. It famously was basically opposite the old infirmary gates, which we're just approaching here. Of course, the Southport Infirmary on Skaisley Road opened in 1895, and Southport Central's ground, where they played up until the end of the 1904-1905 season, was here where Rutland Road is. There was also a showground here, which I mentioned, and it's where Buffalo Bill's Wild West show came into town in October 1904. It's previously been posted and published that the Wild Buffalo Bill show ground took place on another athletics ground, the athletics ground which stood on the site of where Millscop High School now stands. I'll put a picture of a map on the shot on the screen now. It wasn't actually there. It was on the show ground adjoining Southport Central's ground. Now, Southport Central only moved to the current ground, which is, of course, Hague Avenue today, in 1905. Here we've got the old infirmary gates behind me. You can see the Southport Central's ground would have been just behind me right here. Covering where Rutland Road and Falkland Road is today. And also where so this was where the showground would have been, where Falkland Road is. There might be a little bit of it still remaining. I think there's a tennis club hidden down one of the little alleyways down here. So that sorry, not a tennis club. I think it's a bowling club. Sorry, bowling club. Just down here it is. Yeah, that could be the grass that they're played on. Could be a remaining part of the old showground. The Lancashire Agricultural Show also took place here. Of course, not sport, but again, it was a very, very well-used site. So we're coming. So the last site is coming up. It's another athletics ground. I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the Athletics Society in Southport when we get there. Quite an interesting site, actually, so I won't spoil it till we get there. Right, so the last point on part one is here. I'm in Duke Street Cemetery. So there used to be an athletics ground here from this section. So basically, if you imagine where Birch Street is over there, the cemetery used to end in seaward of that. And this section here behind me was used as an athletics ground during the 1870s. Now, the Southport Athletic Society, they first used, I believe it was the grounds within the Palace Hotel in Birkdale. And then they moved to the Row Lane site, which we covered earlier. Then they came here up until the early 1880s. And then when the athletics ground on Sussex Road opened in 1882, they moved there. Now, I think the Sussex Road, I said earlier that I think that stopped being in use in 1892. The lease actually expired in 1895. So, yeah, there was an athletics ground right here where we're stood now. And in 1877, I found a little snippet in the Visitor. There are actually 7,000 spectators here watching all sorts of events, running, cycling, and all sorts of athletic events. So, as I said, this is where part one of the Lost Sports Grounds of Southport end. I'm hoping to do part two. I might get out towards the end of next week, which I'll cover sites in Birkdale and Ainsdale. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like and share all the Secret Sandland social media pages, and let's hope for an England win tonight, get through, and good luck to the local golfers at the Open, Tommy Fleetwood and Matthew Baldwin, and I hope everyone going there will enjoy themselves and enjoy the town as well. Thank you very much.